Welcome, folks, to the Dopamine Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Sean David Cohen, and today's hot topic, common sense. This is the ultimate symbiosis of mind and body, where we promote and protect the holy grail of brain juice, the elixir of life, dopamine. Yes, you have tuned in to the high frequency holistic living network. Yes, thank you for tuning in. This is a public service announcement from the Holistic Living Network. Common sense is all important to your dopamine levels. Protecting your dopamine levels, it's all important. We're going to go over what happens when you lack common sense. They say only 10% of us on the planet actually have common sense or a decent amount of it or use it daily. And I know what you're thinking. How in the world does common sense relate to dopamine? Directly, because a lack of it leads to incidents that reduce dopamine drastically. I'm going over them all today. I've got a whole list. Yes, I do. Trusting big pharma is a lack of common sense. Trusting big food. Trusting the regulatory agencies. Big lack of common sense. Trusting gross energy. Trusting these people that aren't wishing you well, that don't want you to succeed, that don't like when you're happier than them. Yes. So common sense, or lack thereof, lack of common sense is defined as taking unnecessary risks or high percentage risks where there's a high percentage chance that you're going to get injured or killed. Misjudging situations repeatedly, lack of common sense. Picking fights, lack of common sense. There are people in this world who are trained fighters, trained killers, trained in self-defense. You don't know what they've been through. There's people that have pent-up anger from abuse or war. You don't know what they've been through. Never pick a fight. Never pick a fight. These examples highlight a disconnect between actions and their foreseeable consequences, or a failure to adapt behavior based on social cues or personal experience. In other words, people can't read what's going on around them because they lack common sense. They're not applying common sense. Everyone has it, of course. You can use it. You can figure things out. Take a moment and think before you act. People ignore personal space or boundaries of other people. They ignore their personal space. You have personal space. People get in your face. They're talking to you too close. They're driving and they're merging into your lane. They're hugging your lane right on the line, or they're just over it a little bit. You're trying to pass. They're almost hitting your car. Lack of common sense. You get in a wreck and your dopamine is spent. You get injured in a wreck. Your dopamine is spent for days or weeks or years. They're not making sensible judgments on the spot. Taking unnecessary risks. People who ask questions that have already been answered. Oh, went through that in high school. This girl from my neighborhood, she was always asking questions that had already been answered, or just asking questions to get attention. Total lack of common sense, lack of respect for everybody else. Overcomplicating simple tasks. Who knows about people who overcomplicate simple tasks? Just do it. It indicates a difficulty in breaking down problems into manageable steps and finding efficient solutions. They're just inefficient people. It's so frustrating. That's why a lot of people do everything they can to work for themselves, to be their own boss, so they don't have to deal with all that. Failing to learn from past mistakes. This suggests a lack of reflection and an inability to adapt behavior based on experience. So lack of reflection. One of the things that I've discussed and promoted on this podcast is reflection. And dopamine has a lot to do with that, because when we have a bad self-image, we don't want to reflect. If we think lowly of ourselves, we don't want to think back on our day or a week or a year and think of all the things that happened and how we're growing from it and learning from it. We don't even want to think about that because we feel like we've wrecked everything or ruined everything or made mistakes that are irreversible, made mistakes we'll never learn from. So reflection's huge, and it's part of common sense. Common sense is telling you, reflect on the day, reflect on the week or the month or the year. Look back. Appreciate the successes. Think about the failures or the mishap or the bad judgment calls where you didn't use common sense and go, not again. Definitely not in that arena. I'm not making those mistakes again. That's part of reflection. You learn and you move on. You don't just live in regret and sulk or stick your head in the sand so you don't have to think about anything. Then you're just going to keep banging your head against the same wall, making the same mistakes, repeating the same actions to expect different results. That's another definition of lack of common sense. So I've discussed this before. I watched the survival show Alone. I love this show for many reasons. One, because they're out there in nature and they've got to survive. The person who survives the longest wins $500,000. So you've got these survivalists. You cannot get on the show if you don't know a bunch of survival skills like how to build a shelter, how to hunt for food, how to forage, what to forage for, what's poisonous, and how to start a fire. These are the basic survival instinct skills. But these people seem to all lack common sense. I don't know if any of them at all have ever displayed any common sense, because I've seen all the seasons. I'm like on my second round and I'm watching this show. And so this one guy, he finally catches these big fish, couple big fish, and he puts them in a little pool, a little wading pool in the rocks, and leaves them there overnight because it's almost nightfall and he doesn't want to have to take them apart and get all the bones out and then smoke the meat or eat it. I mean, he should have at least eaten one that night. He leaves them out, and of course an animal comes and steals them. Some kind of weasel or an eagle comes along and steals the fish, and he can't believe it. He's flabbergasted the next morning. He is so distraught because he didn't eat anything but some berries for 3 days. Just total lack of common sense. It's unbelievable. Another guy's hunting, and he's got his arrow quiver on his back, and they only allow them 9 arrows, and he's got all of them in the pack. And he hikes about 1.5 miles from his base, from his tent. He's looking for bears or porcupines. And at some point, and he's not tracking his trail with anything, at some point the arrows fall off the whole quiver and it's gone because the brush is deep and it's colorful. He cannot find the arrows. He's ruined. He ends up quitting. It's unbelievable, the lack of common sense based on experience, okay? So this applies to everyone based on your own personal experience. You should have built up a lot of common sense just through your own history, your own personal experiences. That's part of it. Now, the rest of common sense is just judgment in the situation, okay, which requires cognition, okay? Now, dopamine fuels cognition. If we don't have enough dopamine being produced in our liver and kidneys, if we don't have enough dopamine in our brain because we're suffering dopamine depletion or dopamine leakage syndrome, leaky brain syndrome, or we don't have enough dopamine because as it's traveling on the neuronal pathway, it's leaking out because we've been eating a bunch of chemicals, then we suffer brain fog and lowered cognition. If you're drinking out of your tap, you're most likely drinking fluoride, sodium fluoride, which the Harvard study showed lowers IQ in humans. So if you're lowering your IQ by drinking fluoridated water, you have a lack of common sense because your cognition is affected. This is why we eat clean. This is part of holistic living. The art of life is a constant readjustment to our surroundings. Everything can change at any moment, and you have to make adjustments. It's based on cognition and common sense. We got to not only survive, but we want to thrive. We want to do well. We want to do well at our jobs, at our hobbies, at our leisure. We want to be good at relaxing. We don't want to get hurt. That ruins everything. You get injured because of stupidity, and it ruins everything. You get sick unnecessarily because you take too many chances. You don't wash your hands after the restroom. You don't wash your hands when you get back from the grocery store or any public facility, public transportation. If you're touching your eyes and your nose and your mouth, your wet orifices, when you're out in public these days, you're going to catch something. You're going to get sick. If you're not taking supplements and eating clean, you're probably going to get sick repetitively, which is going to drain your dopamine, which drains your cognition, which ruins your common sense, and it just comes full circle and you keep making more mistakes. This is how people get trapped in dead-end jobs. This is how people get trapped in bad relationships. This is how people get trapped in the gross energy matrix. Depleted dopamine and lack of common sense. Wearing sunglasses at night. You want to drive down a set of steps? I did that in college once. During the daytime, I wore sunglasses that were too dark, and there were some steps. They looked just like a little road that went down to a parking lot, and I was in a rush, and I drove down steps in dark sun. Don't wear dark sunglasses. Drinking water straight from a lake or a river without boiling it. This is another scene from Alone. So these survivalists will literally drink water. Not all of them, but some of them will just drink water straight from the river or the lake that they're camped out next to without boiling it. And then they get Giardia or some kind of parasitic bacterial infection, and they can't figure out why. I'm not sure what it was. I cooked the fish. What could it be? Common sense, folks. Common sense. Not eating huge meals. Okay, that's common sense. Our stomach is the size of our fist. Okay, your hand balled up. Your stomach's no bigger than your fist. Think about how much food people eat when they go to like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Think of how much food is served at the average restaurant when you just order it off the menu. Just as is, just the meal itself is enough to feed 2 or 3 people, what they bring you. Never mind the appetizers and the bread rolls and butter they bring you, or the chips and salsa, or whatever they put on your plate before the food comes. America eats some huge meals, and then you've taxed your whole digestive tract. You've taxed your cleansing organs. Most of the time, there's cheese and bread in almost every meal, especially if you go out to eat. There's always cheese and bread. Everything on the menu has bread or cheese. And then it's got canola oil in it because all the restaurants use canola oil, which also lowers your IQ and wrecks your memory and wrecks your common sense. And it's toxic, so it's wrecking your dopamine. Unbelievable how much we get bombarded with things that wreck, ruin, destroy cognition and common sense. Unbelievable. You see these stories of people committing a crime and posting it on a video on social media. Do they think they're not going to get caught? They'll literally post it. Or they'll wear a mask. They'll commit a crime. Like you see this in LA right now, like these guys that are throwing rocks at the ICE trucks, at the police trucks, and they've got a mask on or a hood, so they think they're good to go. They think they're going to get away with it. And the guy got busted that was throwing the rocks at the cars. Even if you've got the mask on, they got the visual interpretation. They got AI running algorithms on your face. And then these people, everybody's got a cell phone. So these people keep the cell phone in their pocket. And they've got location on because they got to figure out how to get to where they're going. And so the FBI just tracks you by your phone. They're like, you were there. That's you. And you're busted. Lack of common sense. And if you're committing violent acts in general, total lack of common sense, because if you end up in jail or prison, there's going to be people there. They're all animals. And there's going to be people there that are violent and vicious and cruel all day, all night long. They don't sleep when you're trying to sleep. You're working for free. The food is horrible. So you have zero dopamine. Your level of dopamine is at nothing in prison. And these people commit acts. They think they're going to get away with it. Total lack of common sense. And there's mental activities that have repercussions that you could use common sense to not engage. So if you get in arguments frequently, if you like arguments, you like arguing, you want to argue politics with people, if you want to just argue for the sake of making your point, and you got to get in the last word say, this is burning up your dopamine. Burning it up, and then you don't have much dopamine for all the things you love. You're tired, you're lethargic, can't figure out why. You're burning up your dopamine. It's a lack of common sense. If you're just into arguing, or if you're harping on failure, if all you do is harp on mistakes and failure and talk about negative things, that's also total lack of common sense, because you're not addressing positivity. You're burning dopamine, and it's a total waste of time and waste of effort. So common sense is holistic. Common sense is holistic because you're thinking about your health all day. You're thinking about your safety all day. And you're doing things. Some of it's just second nature. A lot of common sense is second nature because you know better and you know from experience. And so you just function on a high frequency so that these things have a very low likelihood of happening to you. And when they do, you've learned from experience how to nip them in the bud, how to fix them, and move on. That's holistic living. Not trying hard drugs. They're addicting. Common sense tells you don't ever even try them. Don't ever even try cocaine or heroin or fentanyl or crystal meth. I mean, if you get injured or you have an operation and you got to go on, some opioid for the pain because it's so bad, you don't want to take it when that pain subsides. When you're getting past that pain, you want to switch up to a lesser toxic, a lesser addictive drug. I mean, they design these opioids to get people addicted to them. So common sense, use common sense. Investing in scams. A lot of people will take their money and they'll invest in these Ponzi schemes and multi-level marketing. There's a lot of that. That's been going around for like 30 or 40 years, multi-level marketing where people, they charge an outrageous, exorbitant fee just for you to join, and then you're supposed to sell something that's a scam, that's too expensive, and they don't really care if you sell it or not. It's all about you investing in the product in the first place. So just to start, you got to give them $400 or $1,000 just to start, and they know most people can't sell. There's not that many people that are social and skilled enough in sales, even if you're trained. It's very hard to sell anything, especially something that's overpriced. So these people, lack of common sense gets them involved in some quick get-rich-quick scheme, and it sounds good on paper, and they just lose all their money. Common sense. Don't trust gross energy. Okay, so these people that don't want you to succeed, if you have friends, if you have coworkers, if you have neighbors who seem to want you to fail, who don't smile when you tell them some good news, don't associate with them. Say hi and bye. Don't waste your time. Protect your dopamine at all costs. At all costs, folks. Take supplements. Check out the book, The Dopamine Revolution. This is available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. It's available at Barnes & Noble's, paperback and ebook. 315 pages. All right, thanks for tuning in, folks. This has been another episode. I think it's my 32nd episode of the Dopamine Revolution podcast. Live life to the fullest every day. I wish you well. Have a wonderful day. We're midway into June 2025.